Hey everybody, it's Dominic Rubino here from Cabinetmakerprofitsystem.com. How are you? And thank you for joining us here today. Today I'm here to talk about how cabinet makers, architectural woodworkers, furniture makers, etc. can sell your business to the right kind of buyer so that you get the maximum amount of profit. I mean, that's the reason you've been working all these years, right? So one day you can sell it, you get all the money you want, so you can go buy a massive motorhome and drive across North America, across the world. You have a little bit of trouble, I think, getting to Australia and Hawaii, but you could hit a lot of it. Anyways, listen, that's what we're going to talk about today here is a really simple graphic, something that's easy to understand. You can, if you don't have a business partner, you can look at it yourself. But if you do have a business partner, it's nice to have something to look at, to understand, and map out exactly what the lines look like to get from here to there. And that's what I have for you here. If you want to download the image that needs to go along with this discussion, go to the website, which is Cabinetmakerprofitsystem.com, and then /3 buyers. And it'll be available for you there. I'll have links to that in the show notes here. I'll have links to that on the website. You can find it on Facebook and on YouTube, etc. So it'll be relatively easy to find. And if you can't find it, email me at DR, it's my initials for Dominic Rubino, not a doctor, didn't make it, DR at Cabinetmakerprofitsystem.com, and my assistant or myself will get that off to you anyway. So you need this graphic to go along with this particular talk. I am going to walk through a very simple picture here, and that picture is made up of, imagine an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper in front of you, okay? There's going to be 3 pictures on it. Picture of a triangle, another triangle in the middle, and then on the right-hand side, an hourglass shape. Okay, so I'll be talking about it that way. We'll go from left to right. The columns in your mind, if you're listening to this while you're walking the dog or maybe in the truck and you're driving to a job site, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of money. How much money am I going to make? Time, how many months will it take me to complete the deal once I find the right buyer, potential buyer? And then the third column on the right, which is the hourglass shape, is how much owner involvement will it take? So once you sell this business, how long are you going to have to stick around, or do you get to finally go golf? Okay, so that's how we're going to talk about this. If you want any more information, go to the website, download it. There's also a written report that goes along with this. It's 6 pages long, I think, but it's super huge writing, so it's not a long read. And then we've got the audio here. Please make sure that you download us on iTunes so that you can listen to podcasts and audio trainings like this anytime you want. There's tons of free stuff on the website. Download it anytime you like. Let's get into it. Okay, so people ask me, how much am I going to get to sell my business? And my answer is, I know exactly how much you're going to get, and I'm not being coy here. I'm not goofing around. I also don't know what you're going to get, but I can tell you that there's 3 different price ranges you're going to get for your business. And those are separated in that inverted triangle. At the pointy end, the bottom of the triangle, you're going to get below fair market value. In the middle of that triangle, you're going to get fair market value itself. And at the top of the triangle, at the very top of the scale, you're going to get above fair market value. Now, why can't I tell you what fair market value is? Well, business valuation is a black art on its own. It takes into account so many different things. And there are business valuators in your city, town, and country who can do this way better than me. I don't do it. I don't sell businesses. When I work with business owners who have exit strategy in mind, I get them ready to sell, like a home stager. You know, when you're going to sell your house and your realtor says you need to stage the house, well, I show people how to stage their business so that it sells for maximum profit as quickly as possible to the right kind of buyer, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what I do. So how do we sell to the fair market value buyer, and who is that? How do we sell above fair market value? How do we sell below fair market value, and why the heck would we? But I'm going to explain that here because I have seen all 3 of those situations many times. I bought and sold businesses myself, so I didn't just read this in a book. This is all from experience of being a business coach now for 18 plus years, and also running and starting and buying my own companies. All right, so in terms of money, if you want to get above fair market value, the first kind of buyer, the kind of buyer that goes along with that, is a strategic buyer. A strategic buyer is usually a company who knows how to buy other companies. Now, they might be doing a roll-up in the industry. So perhaps they're buying you because you do lots of veneering, or you do lots of complicated lathe work, and they need to move into that market for whatever reason, whether it's distribution or people or machinery or setup or whatever, but they want to buy you because you know that business. So a strategic buyer actually hunts you. And I don't mean that in a mean way. They're looking for you. They've got a big board in their office. They've got a list next to it, and the list says, the company we want to buy has these characteristics. Boom, 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 boom. they look like this, they smell like that, they talk like this. I don't mean you smell, but that's what they are saying. You smell like this, you look a certain way. Then they go to the big map on the board and they say, we want to buy this guy and we want to buy those guys. We don't care about anybody else. So they go around looking for you. But you have to look right to get on their radar. They have to know about you. They have to know about you through certain things. You've won lots of awards. People understand what you do. You do the best jobs. You have great ratings. Designers know who you are. GCs know who you are. There's a certain thing that goes along with that that's beyond the numbers. But let's not kid ourselves. It comes down to the numbers. A strategic buyer is very good at buying companies. And when they finally look at your accounting, it has to look a certain way so that they understand how it looks and it's easy for them to buy. There's a lot more information on this. If you are finding yourself in front of a strategic buyer, contact me before you have the big conversation with them, and I'll walk you through a couple things that I know, and that should set you up well for that particular conversation. Okay, so dropping slightly down the scale, remember we're still on the left side of the page. We're talking about how much money am I going to get? We've talked about who's going to pay you above fair market value. That's the strategic buyer. Now we're going to talk about the middle section, the entrepreneurial buyer. That's the second kind of buyer for your woodwork shop. It's the entrepreneurial buyer. Now we all know the entrepreneurial buyer because the definition of the entrepreneurial buyer is somebody we know. So it's management buyout, so your existing team buying you out. It's family buying you out, so your nephew, your cousin, your brother, your sister, your sister's family, your brother-in-law. I don't know who it is, but that person's coming to buy your business, which is great. Inside the entrepreneurial definition, entrepreneurial buyer definition, is also a buyer who's introduced you in the local market by a business broker. And so that kind of buyer has a certain set of expectations and understandings about buying the business. And that'll make more sense when you see the graphic. If you follow the line all the way through, there's a benefit to selling that up to that entrepreneurial buyer that you might really like. So for taking that fair market value and being able to get out of the business quickly. And I'll show you that when you see or download the sheet. Okay. So the second kind of buyer is called the entrepreneurial buyer. The third kind of buyer is somebody who's going to pay less than fair market value. Okay, and that's called the opportunistic buyer. Now you might think, hey, Rubino, seriously? Who's selling to an opportunistic buyer? I put my whole life into this business. I'm not selling it for below fair market value, you clown. And I would say, you're right, I'm a clown. No, listen, I'm not. There are reasons why you may very well take less than fair market value for your business. And it's not me. It's not you. It's life. Stuff happens. And we'll talk about it in a sec, okay? So we've taken care of the left side column. Money. How much money am I going to get? Above fair market value, at fair market value, below fair market value. That's strategic, entrepreneurial, opportunistic buyer. Now we're going to move to the inverted triangle in the middle of the sheet. And that's how many months will it take? How long is it going to take for me to sell this business? Once I find the buyer, and that's really important, once I find the buyer, because I don't know how long it's going to take you to find a buyer. In the case of an entrepreneurial buyer, when you're selling it to your nephew or your brother-in-law, they already know you. So your finding time could be zero. Literally tomorrow, you ask them if they want to buy it, and they say yes. It's still going to take you and them a certain amount of time to do something called due diligence. Due diligence is a process that you have to go through when you're buying a company. And that process is where you look over the systems, the accounting, the finance, the legal, everything to do with the business before you actually complete the financial and contractual agreement. Okay, so it's called the due diligence period, and that comes after the some other things. There's something called a letter of intent, and we can get into that later. But that will take between 6 to 18 months. So if you talk to your brother-in-law tonight at 8 o'clock and he says, yeah, I want to buy your company, it could still take 6 months to 18 months for that financial transaction to take place. So it's good for you and I to know that because life happens and you may or may not want to wait that long to get that fair market value price. Okay, well, let's just jump up a level here back to the strategic buyer. Remember I said the strategic buyer knows how to buy companies, and they also really know how to look at those financial systems, legal systems, operational systems. They want to look at the age of your equipment. They want to look at your leases. Do you own the business, et cetera, et cetera. So many things, right? Inventory, carrying costs, all that. Well, they take a lot longer to do their due diligence because they're very thorough about their due diligence. And so in the case of above fair market value, who's known as the strategic buyer, they could take between 18 and 36 months to complete the transactions. That's 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years to complete the transaction before you get the first sniff of cash in your hand and before you can walk away from the company. Okay. So it's important to understand that, because take your age today. Let's say you're 50 like me. I'm turning 50 this year. You'll be 53 if you found the strategic buyer today. 53 before they complete that deal. Now, it takes a long time to find that strategic buyer. So you might have to add a year or 2 years of looking around the market, finding the right person. In some cases, I've heard of people get lucky. Somebody comes knocking on the door and says, we like your veneering, the veneering side of your business. We want to buy you, or we like the way that you do finishing, et cetera, et cetera. So they come knocking, but they're not going to buy you unless your company looks the way they need it to look, so that they can understand how to pay you a premium for that company. All right, let's drop down to the bottom of the inverted triangle here when we talk about how long it'll take to sell this company. And that's in months. It could take between 0 and 6 months to sell it to an opportunistic buyer. If you priced your shop along with everything you've got at 0, well, let's say $1, you could have a buyer tomorrow who walked in and took it over. And you would be accepting below fair market value. And now you're shaking your head, driving in your truck going, Rubino, who's going to take below fair market value for a business like this? And I'll tell you situations that I've seen in the past. Situations where somebody falls ill, they get sick. They get sick with things that we don't want to talk about. They get sick with cancer. Their diabetes flares up. Their gout flares up. They can't make it into the shop anymore. And they just have to get rid of this because they can't work. And when they can't work, jobs don't get done. When jobs don't get done, their reputation on the market starts to falter. And they realize they got to get rid of this thing fast. I'm sorry to say it. Could happen to me. Could happen to you. I'm not trying to be a depressing guy, but I see it as a business coach. I've been coaching for 18 years now, and I've been an entrepreneur for longer than that. Stuff happens. Hey, stuff happens when guys get divorced. Weird things happen to the accounting and motivations when people are getting divorced. Weird, bizarre, craziness. But all of those real life, just human situations is what happens to make people see that an opportunistic buyer might be their best option. I'm not telling you that it is. I'm just saying that the opportunistic buyer will have less expectations about how good your company looks on paper, about your systems, and about your processes. So if your business is a total disaster, there's no systems, there's no processes, then you look really, really good to the opportunistic buyer. You don't look so good to the entrepreneurial, and you certainly don't look good to a strategic buyer. Strategic buyers want a very, very clean house in order, and they're willing to pay a premium for that. Okay, so let's move over now to owner involvement. How long is it going to take? How long will I have to stick around this business once we agree to the sale? And for those of you looking at the piece of paper, you'll understand it gets skinny towards the middle. That's why it's an hourglass shape. It's wide at the top, wide at the bottom, skinny in the middle. And that's owner involvement. Now, if you're drawing a line, the fair market value buyer who's going to pay you between 6 and 18 months might ask you to leave right away. And this is where the management buyout or the niece, nephew, or brother-in-law buyout comes in. They're thinking to themselves, I know better than George. I'm going to buy George and kick him out. Then I'm going to show him how easy it is to run this company. And you and I can laugh all the way to the bank. But that's the exact buyer who's going to say, here's your money, get out, and let me run this thing. And then they'll see what it's like to run the company themselves and all those responsibilities. But that's the exact situation where somebody says, I'm going to give you the money and you can leave now. And that might be part of your life plan. It's a great plan, right? If you want to get a little bit more money out of the company, especially on the strategic buyer side, they're going to give you something that's called an earn-out period, or you might have heard of it from other friends called a golden handcuffs. And that's where they're going to ask you, the buyer's going to ask you to stick around with the company for 2 years, take the position as general manager or some other title like that, and you'll be responsible for driving profitability in that business, and that profitability will be what you get paid out of. Now, there is a serious downside to that you have to be aware of. And if you do find yourself talking to a strategic buyer and you're wondering about that conversation, certainly talk to your lawyer, certainly talk to your accountant, but certainly give me a call as well. I've seen this 100 times. The moment that you sign the agreement with the strategic buyer that says you will be tied on your earnout to the amount of profit that the business generates is the moment that your relationship flips around. because now their incentive is to pay you less and your incentive is to get paid more. But if they control the cost of goods sold and the operating costs and other things, other factors that are out of your control, you're going to find yourself constantly fighting to get the earn out money. And it just happens. It's just business. It's what happens. So be cautious. And there's some things you can do wisely to set yourself up for success in that. Lots of guys have had success in this. I'm not saying it's bad. Just both eyes open and watch for it, okay? Now, on the bottom side here, the below fair market value guy, the opportunistic guy who's going to buy your business within 0 to 6 months, he might also ask you to stay around because he wants you to run it. And that's called shackles, just plain out shackles. And you want to be aware of that. Maybe you do want that, maybe you don't. But it's something you need to be aware of before you sign any agreement. Listen, we've gone a couple of minutes here. I think this has been a 16-minute, 17-minute video already, so I'll cut it off here. There's going to be lots more information about this. Come visit us at Cabinetmakerprofitsystem.com. We're in a bunch of different places. You can find our podcast on iTunes, our videos on YouTube. Find me on LinkedIn under Dominic Rubino. That's my name. You can find me on Facebook under Dominic Rubino and under Cabinetmakerprofitsystem.com. And of course, when you go to the Cabinet Maker Profit System website /3 buyers, then you can download the document and the picture that goes along with this, okay? I can take a breath now. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your time. If you're listening as a podcast, make sure you go to iTunes so you can subscribe, and you'll get all of our regular podcast updates where we talk about tips and tricks and hacks and ways that guys that are owning cabinet shops are making the most out of their business. Appreciate having you. You have a great day, and we'll talk to y'all soon.